All right, good morning, everybody. Well, morning my time, of course. Many of you, it is not morning. Many of you are overseas, and it's afternoon or evening for you guys. So, good afternoon or evening. So there's that. I tell you what, it doesn't take very long to get out of practice on this stuff. I don't know if you were watching earlier when it first went live, but I still had the camera on me, turned on instead of on the instead of on the logo like I usually start. So, oh well, you got a little behind the scenes picture there if you happen to see it. So, um, welcome again to the Dev Mentor Dave live stream on Saturday morning. This is typically right now discussion around our DeepPockets project, but also we talk about lots of other things, which I'm sure that we'll get into here as we get going. The first hour is going to be DeepPockets project information and discussion, and then the second hour or less, depending on how long that one takes, will be open for discussion. Questions that you might have, random questions that you might have. We'll quickly tackle one that was thrown into Discord this morning as well. So I think that was Mel that put that in there, if I remember correctly. But we'll tackle that one in the Q&A if I remember to do that, as well as any others that you guys have. So if you are watching live, do not forget to say hello in the chat. We've already got some people in there chatting away. So join us in the chat. That's the best way to get a hold of me and to communicate with me. Sorry, hang on one second. Should probably put this in here so I can hear something. Not that it helps a whole lot, because oftentimes I'll switch over to this screen and talk about something on my screen and forget to switch back. And you all are yelling at me in the chat, change screens, and I never hear anything in my ear. So unfortunately, there's no ding or anything like that. That would be nice, wouldn't it, if you guys could actually interact with me in a little bit easier manner. Maybe at some point, if the channel gets big enough, I'll have moderators and give them like my phone number or something they can text me when things like that happens. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll figure that out someday as we go along. But if you're watching live, don't forget to hit the like button. If you are not subscribed, hit the subscribe button. That'll let you know every time that I go live, every time I upload a video, which is a little bit more rare these days just due to some of my own current life circumstances. Didn't have a live stream last week, and I apologize for that. I did have basically planned what we were going to do today for last week, and then Monday didn't work out, so it feels like it's been a long time since we've actually had a full live stream with everybody here. But you know, we'll keep swinging away and see if we can get this project kind of picked back up, because I think we've kind of hit a little bit of a lull in the project, and we're about ready to really start putting it in a high gear. So hopefully those who are wanting to participate in that will be able to jump back in here very quickly with hopefully some helpful information, even some things we'll talk about today. So again, so like, subscribe to the channel. If you're not part of our Discord server, there should be a link in the description of this live stream that should allow you to join the Discord server. Lots of people in there interacting from time to time throughout the week, so jump into that if you'd like some help. If you have questions, it's a good place to go for some live interaction there throughout the week. Let's see. Don't forget, we are still attempting to try to get 5,000 subscribers. I know that is harder to do when you're not putting out as much content as you used to, which is kind of where I'm at right now. But hopefully we'll still keep doing the live stream. I'd like to do at least a video a week if possible. That's about all I have time for at the moment. Hopefully now that school's starting and we're getting out of the summer changes, that'll hopefully get things back into a normal schedule for us, so I'll be able to put things out a little bit more in the days ahead. Just a few updates for you for your schedule, for your calendar. Next Saturday, I will not be live. I'll actually be hosting a board game event locally here over the weekend for some friends of mine. So I will not be live next Saturday, but we will be live the following Monday. So, and I forgot to write the dates down on that. So this coming Saturday would be the 17th. I will not be live on the 17th, but I will be live on the 19th. All right, so 19th at 7 p.m. I'll make sure I get announcements out for that, just so everybody's aware. And then one big one. So we'll have no live stream on the 17th. We'll move that to Monday, which is the 19th. But we will have a live stream on the 24th. And we'll have a kind of an important live stream on August 31st. And the reason why that's important is because that will be pretty much, just a little bit after, but that will be pretty much the 1 year anniversary of the Dev Mentor Dave YouTube channel. I know it's probably hard for you to believe. It's hard for me to believe that we've been doing this for a year, but we've been doing it for a year. So, and it feels like we've had some good times, we've had some bad times. It's definitely been an interesting ride. So, in just a couple weeks, 3 weeks, we're going to have a little bit of celebration. No, I'm not planning on baking a cake, in case anybody's asking. But we are going to have a little bit of a celebration. I'm trying to think of something that we might do for that, and I don't know. I'm thinking about maybe some sort of giveaway. So if anybody has any ideas on that, I'd love to do something just to kind of promote it a little bit and kind of celebrate, get as many people who have participated in our live streams and stuff to come back to that one. So August 31st will not be a DeepPockets live stream. It'll just be kind of a celebration of our first year on YouTube complete. So if you have ideas, throw them in the Discord channel, throw them in the chat, throw them in comments on the live stream. Those are the best ways to get a hold of me. I see all of those. So send any ideas that you might have of what might be some good ideas for a giveaway. Probably more of a drawing type thing would be my guess. Maybe something that we can do live on the channel in a couple of weeks. So anyway, no live stream next week. We'll do it the following Monday the 17th. We will live stream on the 24th, and we will live stream on the 31st, and the 31st will be a celebration live stream. Let's see. Mel says, giveaway for 1 month personal membership. Membership to what? I don't have memberships. I've thought about it. I just don't really have the time to dedicate to something that's worth asking people to pay for, in my opinion. So I don't really have memberships yet. Oh, mentorship. Oh, okay. See, here's the deal, guys. I'm just going to be real with you for a second. I need to go to the doctor and get my eyes checked. I've been doing this a lot more lately than I used to, and it's just, I'm getting old. I know I don't look that old, but I'm getting old. I'm up there. I'm 43 now. That's pretty old. So I apologize, Mel. I just kind of made an assumption based on that without actually focusing in and looking at what you're reading. So if you guys see me pulling my glasses down a lot, that's what's going on. My eyes are just really bad. Probably from staring at a screen 90% of my life, at least over the last 20 years or so. Just FYI, that could be a hazard of the job if you're jumping into it. Your eyesight might have some issues. These have the blue light filters too, I think. So you would think that would be helpful, but apparently the eyes are not in as good a shape. Or seeing this is probably fine, but it's the bifocals I probably need. And that, anytime you start talking about bifocals, you're getting old. I don't know what that's going to be like. Trying to write code with bifocals. If anybody happens to be able to do that, let me know what that experience is like. So Mel says, you set up the environment and fix it the first 5 times I break it. That could be one day. That's awesome. Yeah, no, I'm not opposed to that stuff too. So just let me know, guys, what ideas you might have as far as what we could do. I don't really have any swag or anything like that. I wouldn't be opposed to making something. If somebody wanted like a t-shirt or something, I don't know. We'll think of something, but we got a few weeks. It doesn't have to be available at that point in time, whatever it is. We can just think about it and figure it out. So August 31st will be celebration of 1 year on the Dev Mentor Dave YouTube channel. So just FYI with that. Let's see. What do we have next here? Amazon gift cards. I'll tell you what, I'll put all the money that I've made on YouTube so far on an Amazon gift card. uh, let's just say it won't be much. um, let's see. Okay, I wanted to, before we dive into the topic, I want to just look at a couple things here on the DeepPockets project. I need some coffee. Hang on real fast. That's pretty good. It's not, I had it earlier, Mel, so it's not hot. It's just a little bit warm. But it's good enough for me. Not microwaved, it's fresh. Okay, so let's see. I'm trying to remember what we last merged in, because it's been a while and I didn't have time to really look at this. Are we still on? Are we still on the CRUD tickets? Did we ever do reviews on CRUD tickets? I don't see any CRUD tickets, actually. I think we moved everything in. Yeah, I merged all the fixes. Okay, so there's no merge files for that, but I do want to take a look at some of the... Oh, that makes sense, Mel. I don't think I ever did the ticket. That would be a good reason why it's not available. Hey, Ollie. Let's see here. Oh, and by the way, sorry, Ming. I didn't say hi to you when you came in. Welcome. Congratulations again, by the way. It looked like you're starting this Monday, so that's awesome. I love to see it. Love to hear you guys getting out there in the workforce, actually getting some success. So that's cool. All right, so let's take a look at some of the homework submissions that were made. I think I've got two that came in. Unless anybody knows one, maybe one was thrown into the Discord channel. I'm not sure, but there are two that were submitted on the homework repository. So let's jump over there. Okay, so we've got the homework repository here. My camera's a little off. Hang on one second. Let's see. My head is not in the middle, and it's throwing me off a little bit here. I know it's probably, you guys don't care, but it makes me feel better. Okay. Okay, so we've got a couple of different items. We really need to... Oh, that's old stuff. Okay. So let's take a look at Neil's. Actually, I want to look at this one first. Okay, so files change. Here's our link. 2 pages in the link, landing page and line item page. I think this is one that was, I don't know if both of you posted these in Discord or not, but yeah, okay. So Mel, you're saying this one's posted in Discord too. Okay. Let's see. I'm gonna have to grab the whole thing because it's not linking to it right here. Let's open this up. Loading. All right, so this is the first one. I did look at this one, which was cool. It went to the website and stole all my stuff. No, that's awesome. This is, again, it doesn't have to look like the Dev Mentor Dave website, but that was a good idea. Good thinking there. So we've got the DeepPockets title here. Budgeting tells you what it is, which is probably a good thing. Budgets, accounts, bills, transactions. Awesome. Do any of these go anywhere? I forget. No? Okay. Is there a... button. Oh, haha. Push the right button, that'll work. Okay. So then we have, so this is kind of like a landing page. It lets you go to specific things that you can interact with. So I really like the thought process, the thought process on this. Um, and again, those are kind of the separate pieces, right, that you would be interacting with. I think transactions, I might would typically do those inside the budget view, but that could they could also just be transactions that you're inputting randomly. So it's definitely not wrong for sure. Again, I think this is one of the important things to think about when it comes to application design, and I think this is why it's a little bit hard for. Hey O'Neill, I think this is why it's a little bit hard when it comes to dealing with clients, right? Because clients typically don't know what they want until they've seen something. Um, and you can spend a lot of time talking through it with them. You can spend a lot of time planning, but until you start to actually designing things and showing them what something could look like, it's really hard to get feedback from a lot of people because they're most people are very visually activated. They're not very they can't just necessarily think in abstract terms and just pull ideas into their mind. They have to be able to see stuff. They have to be able to interact with it. Um, yeah, exactly. They need prototypes, and so that's one of the reasons why typically I'm going to switch here because I'm talking. That's one of the reasons why I would typically say you want to figure out what MVP is. If you don't remember what MVP is, it stands for minimum viable product. You want to figure out what that minimum viable product is that would meet their basic needs, because you're going to have to iterate on that product over and over and over again. And so the less time and the less money you can help them spend getting to the basic concept, the better it's going to be for them and for you in the long run. And part of in my opinion, the best part of that is by having some sort of design. Now, again, does it have to be, do you have to have a designer? No. I mean, you guys are perfect examples. You've put together some designs here. As far as I know, you're not designers. Maybe you are. But you guys have put together some designs here. And so you can at least visualize for them what they're trying to do. So, for example, here, you have an idea of what the possible options would be if you're going to land on this page, right? And as I look at that, I can see that, I can understand that, but that also gives me something to make a decision about. It's not just this nebulous idea of what the what possibilities could be, right? I can see something substantial here, and that gives me the ability to make a decision as a client. So I can look at this and I can go, you know what? I don't want transactions there. I want transactions to be handled inside the budget itself, right? And so, but that doesn't mean this was wrong or bad. This helped us get to a position of making a decision. And that is really, really important when it comes to designs. So if you're working on designs, even if it's just wireframes or it's something like this, you're just trying, the goal is to try to facilitate conversations and facilitate decisions. All right. That's all right, Mel. Nobody's going to get it the first try, and I didn't give you a lot of instructions on it too, right? So, and that's why, again, having a good designer, a real designer who does this for a living, makes a huge difference. I can't really show you anything from my work, but we have a designer at work that, I mean, he just comes up with concepts. You give him the basic idea, and he's not only really good at design, but he's really good at thinking through user interaction, user interface, what the user would want to do, right? So it's not just UI, it's UX as well. It's important to have both of those things married together during that process, because a good designer, good UI UX person can save you a lot of time, and again, can facilitate those conversations with the client to really help you nail down exactly what MVP is, to nail down exactly what the workflows are. That's what we're going to talk about today a little bit. So working with a good designer or developing your own design skills to where you can have those interactions is huge. The problem is it can take a lot of time, most likely. So just out of curiosity, Mel, how long did it take you to do these designs? Just throw it in the chat. Let me know if you have an idea. I'd be interested, and it's okay if it's really short. That'd be awesome, actually. So I'm going to switch over to the next page here. So we've got this kind of the landing page, but let me know what that took. All right, and then we've got this is our budget page, right? So we've got the budget name. Um, I'm not opposed to stuff like this, but I think even though we know it's a placeholder, I think when you do design, I would rather have a real value there just because it helps. It doesn't look as incomplete, if that makes sense. So when a client looks at that, they see that as kind of an incomplete value, right? An incomplete design. It's like you had a template and you didn't finish it, you know? And again, I'm just throwing this out there. This is not that doesn't mean everybody does this. This is just me from a client perspective, right? It's not wrong. It doesn't look bad. It just doesn't quite give me that completed look to it. So I would say actually put just budget name or just give it a budget name, like April 20, or whatever, something like that. So, month and year, home button, great concept, right? So these are the things that you have to think through when you're thinking about design. User interface, user experience, right? How am I going to get back to the other place? Great job thinking through that and putting that in there. Okay, we've got the line items, and again, I think this is going to be different. But again, we're just thinking through budget line items. Again, I would put an actual amount here. Info, I would probably change info to an edit button. Because we'd probably want to be able to allow them to edit information here rather than like a modal or a drawer or something like that. Yeah, see, that's the thing. So Ian's jumped in here. He's trying to tell me that I'm wrong. No, I'm just kidding. um, yeah, I think it's definitely a preference thing. So that's definitely not wrong. My preference would be to be able to see something like that. I think from a dev standpoint, it makes perfect sense to me. As a client, I don't know. It could go either way. Yeah, it does look like a UI for a mobile app. That's a good point, O'Neill. We are doing this as a desktop app, but I think we should consider mobile. That's going to be preview of coming attraction issue maybe. So one of the nice things about using something like a component library is that helps with a lot of those design pieces out of the box to help you with mobile responsiveness and things like that. All right, so we can create a new line item. Here's our listing, things like that. Budget total. All right, so this is a good start. Again, the goal of this was to think through design, was to think through how would I lay out this information? How would I show a client what this is going to look like? All right. So great job, Mel. If you actually watched the video, the live stream that I did this on, man, I was really struggling with Figma. I've learned a few things even since then. Um, Most of my usage of Figma has been in as a developer, like pulling stuff out of it, getting information from it, not the design piece of it. So man, I was I was really struggling in that live stream, but it looks like you guys kind of were able to get that figured out. So good job, Mel. Again, we're not looking for perfection. We're looking for experience. We're looking for you to experience something and get some experience in it. Think through the process. And what that does is that gives us an opportunity to have a launching point to have a discussion. And that's the goal of that assignment in the first place, right? So let's jump back over here to wrong thing. We'll look at this one. Okay. Is there a link to this? Um, O'Neill, do you have a link to this, or is it just the picture? Okay, no worries. Let me see if I can open it bigger. Can I open it bigger? There we go. Ha. Okay, so this is um kind of a dashboard type view. Um, Again, very desktop, very app. I like the look of it. It's using the component library, which is good. Um, be nice. I'm always nice, O'Neill, unless I'm joking. Uh, Dashboard, categories, reports. All right, that's good. We might have. So these are recent transactions. I really like this idea here. I think something else that I would uh, maybe have is some sort of edit button over here. I know there's a gear. I'm not sure exactly what the gear would be for. Um, Maybe to add some. I don't know. That would be a question that I would have. Of course, I'm in the way. No, no. Okay, that would be maybe a question I would have as a client. You know, what does the gear do? And that gives us an opportunity then to talk through um, some of the process flow, right? But I would maybe add another column here that's an edit button in case we needed to edit something about it, such as the type. Maybe it came in from our bank or something like that, or maybe we just picked the wrong type, and so we need to change that. So I would have an edit button and even a delete button, or maybe like the three dots menu that gives me the option to edit or delete. Um, that would be my only thing here. But I do like this. I would probably call this like recent transactions. Um, or or maybe this is a transaction list of items that haven't been categorized, right? If you do have something coming in from like a third party API or something like that, which we're not going to do for this app, but just thinking, for our bigger app, a real budget app, um, that might be something that we would do, is have a table for that. But this is the transactions. Another thing here, maybe I would add like a date range search so that I could see the transactions within a specific date range. Um, my assumption, correct me if I'm wrong, but my assumption is that this would be the transactions for a specific budget. Is that right? Let me know. The one other thing, assuming this is a budget view, okay, assuming this is that's what I thought. Assuming this is a budget view, I think there's the other thing that I would want to see would be my budget line items, right? So the budget line items, because I would want to see, and maybe the transactions go in those line items instead of as a table, but I would want to see the budget line item as well as like how much money I have left, right? So let's say I've budgeted $100 for groceries. That's grossly under budgeted, but $100 for groceries, especially for my size of a family. So I've got $100 budgeted for groceries, but I want to see how much is left or how much I've spent. Maybe there's a toggle. Maybe there's a settings in this application that says show me total spent or to show me total left, or maybe both, right? So there's some things that I'd want to see there, but I'd want to see the transactions is fine, but I want to see like the budget line items. I want to see the things that I have planned to pay either as categories or just the line items the line items themselves, so that I can see at a quick glance where I'm at with all the different things. That would be very helpful. I do like the total spending. I think that's good in the total income. Probably could shrink those down and put them maybe next to each other. Um, I would almost move accounts to its own page because I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be necessary on the to view it on the budget. You could maybe just put them up in a small box, and maybe in smaller boxes. I don't know. I don't know that accounts necessarily need to be in this view, but I think the big thing for me would be the line items, the budget line items. So knowing how much we've spent out, or some sort of indication of where it's at. I know some budgeting software will have like a bar that goes across that shows you how much you've spent, or maybe it turns red if you've overspent, yellow if it's like getting close within like 10% of what you budgeted or something like that. So there's different things that we can do there. And again, that's lots of ideas, but that's what this is for, right? This is for helping us think through what do we actually really want. And then we go back to our designer and we say, hey, here's some of the things that we want to do from a design standpoint, from a workflow standpoint. All right. So overall, very clean, very clearly an application. I like that. This is definitely a desktop application. The other one did seem a little bit more mobile, which again, neither of those things are wrong. We are going to go more of a desktop version for this. And so, yeah, I really like it. I think you did a great job using the components from Figma. So that's awesome. So great job, O'Neill. So excellent. Again, at the end of the day, it's important to remember the whole purpose of designs. Well, there's two purposes of designs, right? One purpose is to get sign off on what you're doing, right? So to get the client to say, yes, that is what we're doing. That is approved, right? You want your scope to be clear on the project. So the purpose number one of designs is to get a clear scope from your client. But the second purpose of design is to facilitate conversation, right? To facilitate conversation around what it is they want. And so a lot of times, especially on big projects, man, designs are going to be frequent. They're going to be in especially all the early meetings. You might end up doing quite a few designs before you even start writing any code, depending on what type of application you're building and what the requirements are. Sometimes you can start writing, especially some back-end code and things like that, before designs are completed, at least initial designs. But there's going to be lots of iterations, and it's important to keep that in mind, and not be frustrated when that happens, because all of that is just kind of a part of the process of the application. All right, let's see. See if I'm missing anything else. Oh, always, I think most everyone in here knows this, but if you're trying to get a hold of me specifically with a question, write at DevMentorDave. That'll put a little red box in there for me, or lots of question marks or something that should get my attention if you want to say something for me, because I like to talk. I'm going to keep talking, and I won't always catch everything that happens in the chat. So feel free to throw that in there if you want to get a hold of me. Mel, DevMentor Dave, how do you go about deciding on what should be on each page? I try not to a whole lot. That doesn't really answer your question, unfortunately. I think that's where having a good designer helps. Having somebody who is good at UI, UX. But I would say my basic principle is do one thing on the page, right? One main thing. Now there might be ancillary pieces to it. For example, you might have modals, you might have drawers, you might have things like that. We'll get to that here in a second, actually. But you want your page, in my opinion, you want your page to be focused on one main thing, right? So that's one of the things, like with this design specifically. The design looks good, but I think for me, this is an extra piece that isn't necessary, right? So we're putting two things on the page, because the more things you have, the more main pieces you have on a page, the harder it is for the user in the end to know where to go to do what they want to do. Now, can they learn over time? Absolutely. Have I seen projects, have I seen applications that are just a hodgepodge of all kinds of things on the page and people use them all day long? Absolutely. I'm not saying that you can't or shouldn't. I think for most people though, especially for a non-enterprise app, for an app that's just for the public, I think most screens you want them to deal with one main thing. And again, there's going to be ancillary things that connect to that, but you want to deal with one main thing. So for you want your one page to be budgets, or you want your one page to be accounts or categories, or whatever that looks like, right? So you want your page to deal with one thing. Now that one thing could be a list of things, and maybe there's a slider that comes over from the side, or a modal button that pops up to edit an item in that list. Or maybe it just is editable inline or whatever, right? But I think for ease of use, most of the time you want one main focus per page. That would be my suggestion. And so your workflow is going to want to follow that line of thinking. Pages that might be different, dashboards, right? So dashboards are probably going to be a little bit more. Sometimes you can get them to where they have very similar pieces of information or related information. Sometimes they're just going to be lots of disparate pieces of charts and graphs and things like that. So it just depends. But my typical goal is to have each page be its own entity, its own resource, its own idea or concept, right? That would be my goal. Mel says, so you do one thing on the page and all the other things are navigation to other pages that do different things typically, but I would say one main thing. That would be my only tweak to that. One main thing, because you might still have to do ancillary things on that page that don't really belong in their own page. For example, you might not have a categories page. You might just be like, okay, we have our main categories seeded in the database, and so we don't need a categories page. If they want to add new categories, they'll just do it inline in the form when they're adding a line item, right? So you may not have to have categories as a separate page. The client may want to be able to edit them as a separate page, and in that case, then you would. So a lot of it depends on what the client wants, but also your workflow, right? Is categories a big enough entity to be on its own, to be managed on its own? I think that's the question that I would ask. Is categories a big enough entity to be managed on its own? One could argue that accounts is not a big enough entity to be managed on its own, since there's pretty much just a name. But it could list the transactions, recent transactions to that account. It could list other information about the account. So again, when I talk about dealing with one entity, that doesn't mean there's only one thing on the page. It's just information related to that one thing on the page, right? So like a budget's going to have line items on it. It's going to have the ability to add a line item, to edit line items. It's going to have all that stuff on that same page, but the focus of the page is the budget itself, and those other things are ancillary pieces to that. So hopefully that makes sense and answers your question. But that would be my preference. I think that for me tends to be the best way of going about that. Yeah, the purpose of the page. That's a good way of stating it. So what is the purpose of this page? It should have one purpose. Even dashboards, right? The dashboard has one purpose. And that would be, again, where I'm looking at this, I'm saying, what is the purpose of this page? I would not say that it's nothing against Ian. I'm sorry, nothing against O'Neill. But I would not say that the purpose of this page is like extremely like readily available. Um, it could be, I mean, quite frankly, these could be transactions in the selected account. Maybe it is. I don't know. Right? I just made assumptions about this without having any information really. The page doesn't quite give me a perfect understanding of what this page actually is. So, some ways you can do that. You could add a title to the page. It's up here. Again, maybe that's what this is supposed to be. That's where some of the discussions and talking through that would be helpful along the way. But for a user, does this make sense as the title, or would having a title up here help clarify what this page is for? There's nothing over here indicating what it is. Like a lot of times on menus, you'll highlight the active link. So that would be maybe another thing that you'd want to do just to kind of help validate, hey, this is the page that you're on. So again, the user needs to know what they're looking at. They need to know what they're interacting with at the time. And so it's got to be clear. And the more focused and the more singular the purpose of that page is, the easier it's going to be for the user to interact with that application. All right. Any other questions before I jump over to sort of the topic for the day as well as your homework for this week? A week from Monday will be our next live stream, and I am going to have tickets created that will be available for you guys to start grabbing and start actually building pieces of this application. So if anybody's watching this from later on after the live stream to get caught up on the DeepPockets project, the next live stream, we will have tickets available, individual tickets for those who want to participate in building stuff out. So we are pretty much there. There will be some limited designs for those tickets. But yeah. Good question, Mel. Do we need CRUD done first? CRUD is going to be part of the ticket. So the tickets are basically going to be pieces of the application that will require you to develop both the front end and the back end. All right, so you'll need to develop the back end CRUD for an API. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but you'll need to develop the back end CRUD for the API. You'll need to develop the web routes. You'll need to develop the front end UI, and I should have a base UI in there for you to be able to know where to put different elements and things like that. Hopefully. My goal is to get that in this week, but again, I'm going to be out for a while at the end of the week with my board game event. So I'm going to try to get that in early this week. It may go in the middle of next week though, but you should be able to have some information to get started on your tickets either way. So that's where we're going, but I wanted to kind of walk through a little bit of a process with you today that I do mostly mentally when I'm getting ready to start a project or when I get a ticket. Sometimes I'll do this, not very often, but I'll always do this mentally. Sometimes I'll do this on paper. But I want to give you kind of an idea that I've been playing around recently, and I think it really helps think through the ticket, think through the workflow. That's why I titled this one "Go with the Flow." Think through the workflow and kind of get a jump start on the actual coding of the application of the ticket. Right now, obviously, if you're doing front end and back end, what we're going to talk about here isn't going to be perfect. But this is just a way that you can go through and you can think through and even type through and sort of start your coding process when you're thinking about a ticket, when you're looking at a ticket, right? So what I want to do is I want to show you the thought process and maybe give you a tool that you can use. This is going to be your homework for this week, and I'll explain it in a minute. You do not have to do this for your actual tickets, but I want you to at least try it out and see what you think about it. I want you to at least mess with it and see if it helps you think through the process. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to write some pseudo code. All right. We're going to write some pseudo JavaScript to think through what it is that we're actually going to be building in our ticket. All right. And so the ticket that I'm going to create here is a ticket. The ticket would probably be something like create new account, right? Create new account. So the ticket that I'm working on is I need to add the ability to create a new account. So I might do something like ticket 47, add ability to create new account. All right, so this would be in our budgeting software. This would be like an actual bank account, right? So that's what we're talking about. So hopefully I would have a design to look at that would help me guide my thoughts through some of this. Again, this is something I'll typically do either on paper, and I'll actually write out like workflows and things like that, or I'll just write out a list of things that I want to remember as I'm going through and thinking about the project. But I've recently started playing around with this idea, and so I want to throw it out there to you guys and make you do it. And then I want to see I want to get your feedback on it, see what you think about it, see if you think it's useful at all. So let me do this. So we're going to come down here. Again, we're writing pseudocode. So we're going to write things that look like code, but it's not obviously going to really function. It's not going to really do anything. But I think it'll kind of help us think through the process as we go. All right. So I'm going to start off with just creating what I would call a ticket function, right? So I'm going to go to function, add account. All right, so then I'm going to put all of my thoughts on this workflow in this function. Okay, again, this is probably a weird concept for most of you. I don't know that I've ever actually seen anybody do this, but it's something that I've been playing around with. It's something I think is interesting. And yeah, exactly, Mel, trying new things, right? So I think it's worth a shot. All right, so function is add an account. So then I want to think through, okay, what's the workflow that's going to be a part of this process? All right. What is the user going to do? So what elements am I going to need on the page? Hopefully, again, I have some designs. I'm just going to do this just out of the blue as we go through here. So the first step for adding an account might be something like, navigate to the account page, right? So maybe that's on a menu. All right, so let's just say, let's call it app menu dot open. All right, so function number one, first thing we're going to do is we're going to open the app menu, app menu dot select. All right, we're going to select the accounts from the menu. And again, this is stuff that the user's going to do. It's not necessarily something that's going to be coded, but we're going to have to make sure that those items are there. So this just gives me an idea to walk through the process and make sure that things that I want in the application are actually available to me. Maybe I have to build them. Maybe there is no menu yet. And when I'm thinking through this, I'm like, oh, I just found a dependency. I need an app menu for the application in order to be able to do this, right? So going through this process makes you think about things that are dependencies, right? Okay, so the we'll do something like this: app page or account page loads. So this probably this would be something where it's probably just handled by the Laravel, for example. Although we might want to make a note here that we need to set up the web route, right? So this might be a good place to make sure that we've added the web route so that the page is actually visible in the view for our accounts page. All right, so then we've got the account page loading and we're not worried about the listing because that's not part of my ticket, right? I just know I need an account page. That's a dependency. I need an app menu. That's a dependency. But once the account page loads, I need to make sure that the list doesn't matter to me because that's not my ticket. I need to make sure I can do the things that I need to do in my ticket. So I'm going to need a new account button, right? So new account button. So I need to make sure that that's there, and I can click it, right? So this tells me, okay, I need to make sure there's a new account button. And hopefully the design shows me that and I know what that looks like. But if not, I'm at least thinking through the process of what's going to need to be there. Mel says, if we try this with one of the tickets, should we submit this part of it to the homework repo or leave it commented out in the ticket? I'm going to have you submit this to the repo. So I want to actually read through your pseudocode and see all the things that you thought about in what you wrote out. Excuse me. All right. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, so new account button. I know we need a new account button. I'm going to click that. So the question is, what happens then? Now, hopefully designs have told me whether this is a modal that comes up, whether it's a new page that it goes to, whether it's a drawer that slides out from the right-hand side. I've been using drawers a lot lately in some of my projects, so we're going to stick with a drawer. So I'm going to call this the account form drawer. Drawer? Is that right? I think it's right. Dot open. Okay. So again, this tells me I need another element. All right. So we need, maybe I'll leave a note here. Need button. Need drawer. Why is that so hard to spell? There we go. Okay. So I need a button to click. I'm going to need a drawer that's in place. And I'm going to need a form inside that drawer. All right, so I'm going to need to know what is a part of that form. So maybe let's see. Maybe I do something like this. So let's do const just to make things right. So we'll do account form. All right, and that's going to be an object. So here I'm going to say, okay, what are the fields that I need in my form? All right, I need a name field, and that's just going to be a text box. I think that's it, right? We don't have any other form fields on accounts. Let's go. Let's take a look at our diagram. Yeah, accounts just has a name field, so we only need accounts, our name on there. But I would put in the button as well for submit, right? So that tells me what the account form should look like. And maybe I'd put like account form here, just to, as a visual reminder, the account form should be inside the drawer. So there you go. Okay, so we've gone to the account. We've opened the app menu. We've selected accounts. The account page loads. We've clicked on the new account button, and the new account button causes an account form drawer to open, and that loads the account form. All right, so what's our next step here? So the account form is visible. So the next step would be I'd want to add a name to the account form. So we'll do account form dot name, enter, something like that, just so I know what the action is. So I want to be able to enter an account form name. If you're dealing with a field that maybe this does autocomplete, so maybe you do something like enter and maybe add in here something like search autocomplete, something like that, right? Well, now I know, okay, I need to do, let's do account autocomplete. So maybe down here I would create a function called account autocomplete, and I would describe what that does in pseudocode, right? And again, this is just high level thinking through the process, right? So in my account autocomplete, I'd want it to search, I'd want it to send back a certain number of responses, put all that stuff in here. One of the reasons I think this might be helpful is as you start breaking some of these things out, you can then copy paste this into another file and really start working out your code from there with sort of a jump start on your thought process. You've already thought through the thought process, because at the end of the day, the hardest part about coding is not actually writing the code. The hardest part is thinking through the process of what you need to write. And the second hardest part is fixing the errors you made in your process, which is called bugs. So I might do something like that. And again, this is just pseudocode to visually give me an idea of the steps in the process that I want to go through. All right. So I'm going to enter a form name. And then I'm just going to account form dot submit. And I probably would just change this to submit. And this would be button. I think I did that differently than I would want to. So account form dot submit, click. All right, so that would be the next thing. So I've entered information into the name field, and then I'm going to click the button. So I know I'm going to need a submit button. So what's going to happen when I click that button? All right, now lots of things could happen. You could have it just function like a normal HTML form. You could have it send information via an API call, which that would be my preference. That's what we're going to do for the most part. Excuse me, within this application, they're mostly going to be API calls. So what I would do next is, okay, I know I'm going to make an API call here, but do I want to do anything before I make that API call? Do I want to do any form of front-end validation? That might be a good idea. Maybe I want to check and make sure that the name actually has something in it, or that it doesn't have weird characters that I don't want being sent, or something like that. So you could write this lots of different ways. Again, we're just writing pseudocode here to help us know what some of our thought processes were as we went through this. So I would probably just do something like account form.validate. And so that's going to, maybe we'll do validate fields. I don't know. So account form.validate fields. So this tells me that I'm going to run some method that's going to check and make sure that everything is correct before I send it, as much as I can, before I send it back to the back end. All right. Now, at this point, we've hit a place where we're going to have a conditional, right? We're going to have an if-then statement. So we've got an account form validate fields. And maybe this, again, we're writing pseudocode here, so we're not doing this all perfectly. We're just giving concepts. So we're going to do an if-else statement. Oop. Come on. Okay. So let's do account form dot validate validated, or maybe just valid. Let's go with valid. Account form valid. So if that's true, then we're going to make the API call, and we'll get to that in a second. If it's not true, though, we're going to want to have some sort of notification, right? So let's see, account form dot show errors. All right. Now, so this brings up another question. What does that look like, right? Do we have anything in our designs that show us what an error should look like? Is this a toaster function or something like that? So let's come down here. Maybe I would come down here and I would do something like Maybe this wouldn't even be a count form. It would just be show errors. So I'll do function show errors. And maybe this would be a count form dot validation errors. Something like that, right? So errors. And so here we'd want to put in here what exactly is going to happen. So let's say we have a method that is a kind of a general toaster method, right? So maybe we've got toaster. Oops, not what I want to do. Go back. Maybe something like toaster dot. Come on. I know it wants to write real code. This is really annoying. There we go. sometimes the IDE is not helpful at all. So set message errors, something like this. Toaster dot. Got away with open or show. Maybe show is a better thing. All right. So again, this is just pseudocode to help us think through the process. But now we know what show errors typically does. Maybe there's a maybe the toaster has to be clicked out of, so we're not gonna have like a timer that gets rid of it. It just stays there until you get rid of it. Maybe when you start typing in the field to make an update, or maybe when you click the submit button, part of the validate fields method, and maybe this is not on the account form, maybe it's its own thing, but maybe validate fields shuts the toaster off or something like that, right? So there's things that we would want to think through in this process as far as how this stuff is going to actually work. But anyway, so that's our show errors. Obviously, nothing else is going to happen at that point, right? So everything else that we do inside of this this function, this thought process, is going to be inside the understanding that it's valid, right? Okay, so I created this thing called API call. The idea here is that this is maybe an abstracted service or something like that, where you just pass in the information. So we do something like API call URL, and then account form.field, something like that. So we would pass that into the API call. All right. So the API call is either going to return success or it's going to throw an error, most likely. So we'll assume that this is asynchronous and a catch. So in here, we'd probably do something like this. For lack of a better thing right now, we'll just do console log. Well, we're not actually writing code, so let's do something like show errors, right? We'll actually use our method. So we know we're gonna use the same process there. All right, so we're gonna pass the information in to our method. So that's handling the errors. We know what we're gonna do there. All right, so then we've got our information. We're gonna assume that if it comes back with a 200, that everything's good and we don't need to update anything. That's probably not going to happen. More than likely, you would do something to let the list know that it needs to be updated or something like that. But just for sake of time here, we're just going to deal with just the form information here. All right, so we've got an API call. And then once that API call is valid, we're going to do, you know what? Let's do this. Toaster dot set, what's a good title for this? I want it to be an error. We'll just do type error. Right, and then so here we can do toaster dot set. Do this. All right, success. Show, and this would be something like account created. All right, so we've got the toaster pops up. Everything's good. Almost, right? We've almost got everything working. Not working, but we've almost got everything figured out from a workflow standpoint. And as you can see, again, we've started building out some code that will be helpful to us. Again, not all of this code is going to be in the same file. Maybe we move some of it out. Maybe some of it doesn't even get used at all. But we've kind of thought through some of these processes. And as you start actually building things, for example, let's say you have an actual API call value. Well, you could put that in your pseudocode, and you've already started the process there. Maybe you've got a toaster method and that's already written. And so as you're writing some pseudocode for this ticket, you already know what that code is, and you just pop it in there as you're writing it. So eventually you get to where you're kind of doing everything at the same time. But this lets you kind of think through that from not just a high level thought process standpoint, but from an actual writing code standpoint. So you're kind of marrying both of them together. All right, so there's still a little bit more that I would want to do as part of this ticket. All right, so we've created a new account. The toasters come back. We've shown the toaster, but we want to do a couple of different things. We want the toaster to automatically go away, and then we want to actually close the drawer, because remember, we opened a drawer up here. We want to close the drawer now that that account has been created. All right, so let's do, here we'd probably do this based on a timer, right? So set something like set timeout. And again, this is going to look different. We're just thinking about JavaScript right now because most people understand JavaScript who are watching this. It's a little bit easier. All right. All right, let's say we're going to make it 3 seconds. And the method that we're going to call here is, we're going to do several things here. We're going to do toaster.close or hide. Let's do hide since we did show. Toaster.hide, and then we'll do account form drawer dot close. All right, and that's the basic process. Now again, the next step, maybe you would include in this ticket the need to reload the list of accounts. I would put that in the listing. I would put that here. It just kind of depends on the ticket. If that was something that was necessary, then obviously we would do something like, I would probably do that here outside of the timeout so that the list loads before the drawer closes. So I would do something like account list dot load, something like that. Again, just to let me know, hey, I want to do this before the timeout, before I actually close everything out. All right. So this then tells us, hey, we need an account list, right? So we need to make sure that's there and available. Do we know what that looks like? Do we know what the fields are? Has somebody else already created it? So this, again, helps us think through all the different pieces of our application and gives us at least a starting point from a code standpoint. Is this perfect? No. Is this going to just make you an awesome developer? No. But I think it's something that can be very helpful in thinking through and jump-starting not just the things that you need to do, but how you're going to do it. Because you're not just thinking about, I need a button, I need a form, I need to create accounts. You're thinking about, how am I going to do that visually? How am I going to do that functionally? How am I going to do that with code? What is that flow going to look like? And so I think this can be helpful. And again, for people who've been developing for years and years and years, we basically do this as we're writing the code. Okay, I would not expect a mid-level, senior-level developer to do this for everything. I would expect this to be something more that a junior level does to help them get used to thinking about these things as they're writing the code. most senior level devs are going to basically do this process. They're just going to be writing the actual code and not pseudocode. So is this necessary? No, but I think for junior devs, this could be a helpful starting point, a helpful tool for you to think through the process and think through what needs to be done. All right. Again, some things may just be comments. Like this. Some things may be extra functions that you need to think through, that you need to build. Maybe they're already built and they're just libraries that you pull in and you use them. But those are questions that you need to answer as you're developing your ticket. And so doing something like this that gives you a starting place and gives you an ability to think through the process, I think can be very helpful for a junior developer. So questions, comments, feedback, concerns, mockery, anything you guys got, throw it out there in the chat. Besides just laughter, Mel. Does it make sense? Does it feel like overkill? Do you think it would be helpful? I'd love to get your feedback. Even if you're watching this later, throw a comment on the video and let me know what you think of the process. Let me know if you think it's something that could help you think through the application, think through the process. Again, we've written a good chunk of code here that could be helpful for you. Maybe it's not. Yeah, and really at the end of the day, O'Neill, I mean, that's what we're going for, logic, right? That's the whole purpose of a workflow, is to think through and plan through the logic. Because once you have the logic, then you're 90% of the way there, in my opinion. Then it's just a matter of writing it and fixing your bugs in either your logic or in your coding. So awesome. Thanks, Ming. Yeah, a lot of practice sites will set up the task and give you empty functions. Yeah, absolutely. This is a good place to start with it. How granular? That's up to you, O'Neill. Like, if you wanted to just do this part of it, and not worry about giving any other ancillary information, that's fine. If you wanted to cut out some of these steps and just leave them as comments, that's fine. Really, again, the most important thing is that I want to see you think through the workflow. All right, I want to see you think through the workflow. And so the workflow that I'm going to have you do as your homework assignment is adding a budget line item to a budget. All right, or those are adding a budget line item to a budget. All right, so you have to go back through the database structure and see what all's part of the budget line item. You have to go back through and see what might be on that page, thinking through what might be on that page. Maybe even draw a little design for yourself just to help you think through that process. But the homework's going to be create a pseudocode for adding a budget line item. And again, that could be in its own page. It could be in a modal, could be in a drawer, could be, lots of different options there. So everyone's going to hopefully have a little bit of a different take on this process. But think through it. Again, the whole point is to think through the process and document it. I have found, even today as a senior dev, if I write out the things that I want to do, whether it's in something like this or whether it's on a piece of paper, 9 times out of 10, I write the code faster because I've already thought through the process and I can just flow with the code. When you're trying to think about the code and think about the workflow at the same time, it can be done. Developers do it all the time, but I feel like that tends to make things slower. At least for me. It tends to slow things down along the process. So That's a good question. Let's see. Oh, you're asking Ian, so I won't answer that one. No. I'll um senior devs will have this worked out in their heads most of the time. That's absolutely true. Um and again, that's why I say what we did here, most senior devs will actually just be writing the real code to do that. And they'll do it in multiple files, the places where it needs to be, and they'll do it over time. But even for me, and I don't know if Ian feels this way, but for me, even just writing down the basic workflow, it doesn't have to be this detailed, but thinking through a lot of these steps before I even write code helps me write the code faster because I've already thought through and I already know what I want to do. When you're writing the code while you're thinking about it, you're coming up with it, and you end up revising your code a lot more, in my opinion, when you do that. But honestly, most senior devs probably do it that way, including myself. I would not say I do this all the time. I don't even write all the time, but I have noticed the more that I do that, the faster I actually write the code. You're just splitting the time up, really. At the end of the day, you're spending time focusing on one piece of it, and then another bit of time focusing on the other piece of it. Um, some devs can do that together better than others. For me, thinking through it makes the code writing faster, and I think makes the thinking through it faster too, to separate them out. But that doesn't mean it's for everybody. Mel says, "Is this something you can lose over time? If a senior dev doesn't write any code for 5 years, does his thought process deteriorate?" Um, I don't know that the thought process deteriorates. To me, uh, it's more around the knowledge and remembering of the languages and the syntax and things like that. Because at the end of the day, logic and workflow don't really change that much. Um, the biggest difference is going to be the actual code that's written, right? So maybe 5 years from now, JavaScript doesn't exist. I don't think that's going to happen, but and so I may tend to think of things in JavaScript, and so I might have to tweak how I'm thinking about that if I'm writing pseudocode or something like that. But it's not going to necessarily change my ability to think through a workflow. So yeah, exactly. I'm in line with Ian. The thought process doesn't deteriorate. The language can be lost. Exactly. So it's definitely something you want to stay on top of. This is one of the reasons why you want to stay on top of what's happening in the industry. You want to stay on top of what languages are popular. At least just having some basic understanding of syntax and changes over time. If you're not, I mean, I don't spend nearly as much time coding as I used to. I think most of you know I've moved into more of a management position now, and so going back even just a month or a few weeks, um, can deteriorate your speed, and remembrance of different things when it comes to the languages, but it doesn't change your ability to think through the process, to logically step through it. So Mel says JavaScript and PHP have that in common. People want them to go away, but they never will. Yep, they're here to stay, I think. I don't understand why people hate on specific languages. I've never gotten that. If everybody has a preference, let them develop in their preference. Um, I would say if it's not common, it can be a pain, but there's no reason to hate on a specific language. So awesome. All right. So questions. Any other questions about the homework, about kind of the process and the workflow that we went through? Let me know, and then we'll open it up to any other questions. We've got about 40 minutes or so available. If nobody has any questions, then we'll just say goodbye, or if you have anything you want to talk about, um, I will create a ticket. Sorry, someone's trying to call me. I will create a ticket that will be probably our last community ticket for this specifically here. As soon as I'm off the live stream, I will get that up and I'll post the link post the link to it for everyone in the Discord channel. So if you're not in the Discord channel and you're watching this later, jump in the Discord channel so you can see that. I'll put it in the DeepPockets project channel of the Discord server. So, and it'll just give you the information that that I gave you here. It's pretty high level, pretty open to whatever you want it to look like. I just want you to practice thinking through it and try out the pseudocode and see if you like it, see if you think it's helpful. One thing I did want to just touch on from a question standpoint, I think Mel put in to the Discord channel earlier this morning, really early for me, was a question. I don't know if anybody's answered it there, but I'll give you my take on it. No. Excuse me. So Mel was asking about hosting. In reference to that video that was talking about profiles and things like that. So there's lots of different ways that you can host stuff. And some of it depends on what you're actually developing, whether you're developing a website, whether you're developing a web application. And Mel asked, what's the difference between a website and a web application? For me, a website, the lines are a little blurred, to be honest with you. The lines are a little blurred because so many websites use back-end functionality these days. They're kind of like pseudo apps in themselves. For me, the main difference between a website and a web application is the purpose. A website is there for information, mostly, and a web application is there for functionality, for doing something, for interacting with to perform a function, right? And the reason why that may make a difference from a hosting standpoint is that you could build a whole website that is just static HTML, CSS, JavaScript, never has to connect to anything on the back end. You can use third-party tools to manage forms and things like that. So the hosting for that, you would just need any sort of server that has some sort of static website hosting, that has some sort of web host application like Apache or Nginx installed. So it wouldn't need as much work to host, right? It wouldn't need as much functionality to host. In fact, you can use like an Amazon Web Services S3 buckets. You can host websites there if they're just static websites. I think you can do some similar things with like GitHub Pages. That is technically using GitHub's application. So it's kind of mixed there as far as what the difference is. But the big thing is if you're writing an actual application, like a web application, it's going to live on a web server, or it's going to live in multiple places potentially. If you want the front end to be separate, maybe the front end is a static application that you want hosted in some sort of static hosting, but you're going to have a back-end server that can accept calls, you're going to have a database most likely. That could be a separate server depending on how you have it set up. So there's just more that goes into having an application than having a website. Now, some of those things are kind of taken care of. So for example, if your website is a WordPress website or a Drupal website or something like that, you can have something that to you is very easy to set up, and as opposed to most web apps where you'd have to have some knowledge of servers and things like that. Although you can have some easier stuff set up there too as well. But for example, you can use many hosting services: Bluehost, HostGator, GoDaddy hosting, all kinds of shared hosting companies out there, and they often just have like a one-click install for the WordPress application or for the Drupal application or something like that, to where hosting it is very simple and very easy. Even though technically it's a web application, most people would view it as a website. So as far as what's free, it just depends on where you're looking, and how much you're actually using. If you're writing a very small application, you could probably get by with some free stuff. I will tell you, most of those places, it's only free for about a year or a set period of time. It's pretty rare to be able to have unlimited free stuff, just because most things in life aren't free. So there's that. But yeah, so that, hopefully that helps you understand kind of what the difference is a little bit there. And when I talk about, what's the difference between a website versus a web application. Let's see. Okay. Ming asked a question. When I start on Monday, how can I know? How do I know to show what I'm competent in, as I'm the only solo dev plus one intern? Because I'm not going to know everything. You're not. To me, the key is always honesty. I would rather someone say, "I don't know that." Honest. So let me just take a step back. Honesty plus initiative. Right? Honesty plus initiative. So I would rather someone say, "I don't know that, but I'm going to find the answer." Right? And instead of saying, "I don't know that, can you help me?" Now, obviously, as a junior developer, you're going to reach a point where you say, "Can you help me?" Where you're spending too much time on the initiative part. But that's what I would want to see first. I would want to see that you are able to do things and take initiative to find the answers yourself, and to find the solutions yourself. The second thing that I would say is, your intern, I assume, knows less than you do. All right? So since your intern knows less than you do, look for opportunities to share what you know. And you may feel like you don't know that much, but since they know less than you do, look for opportunities to share what you know. And I don't mean that by being condescending to them. What I mean is, show that you are a mentor. A mentor. You show that you are someone who's going to help them grow their skills. All right? That's going to be beneficial to them. That's going to be beneficial to you. Every time you help somebody else, it helps you feel better about what you know. Every time you help somebody else, well, most times you help somebody else, it forces you to learn something new, or to make sure that you understand something deeper, or understand something better. So taking opportunities to help that intern, to answer questions for that intern, to mentor the intern, is going to help you feel more confident and more comfortable in your role, even as a single developer. So I think that's really cool, having that intern opportunity there. I think that will help you have a feeling of being a better dev. And sometimes that means you're just going to be like, "You know what? I don't know, but let's figure it out together." And so you can show the intern the process you would go through to figure something out, to learn something new. That's not a bad thing either. And that's going to help you learn in your process as well and become a better dev. I think simply looking for quick wins, looking for simple wins, easy wins, recognizing when you've done something and done it well. These are all things that help you when you're solo. My first solo gig, my first really gig at all, was working for my brother. My brother was not technical. He was just a client, basically. He was a client interface. between me and the actual client. And so the feedback he gave me was not technical feedback; it was just client feedback. And so I was very much in that position. I was the only dev, and the information that I was getting back from him was sometimes helpful, sometimes not helpful. And so it really just takes time. But I think in that process, being able to look back and see the things that you've accomplished, take note of where you started and where you're at different periods, maybe monthly or quarterly. Always look back to remind yourself of how far you've come. That to me is the biggest thing that will help you feel like you're productive. All right. Hopefully that makes sense and helps with that process. Ian says, "Can you help me or can you point me in the right direction?" Yeah, big distinction there, right? Can you help me is more like, will you do this for me? Can you point me in the right direction says, hey, do you know where I should go so that I can figure this out, so that I can put in the effort that's necessary, right? So it shows accountability, it shows effort. Um, yeah, absolutely. And maybe, for example, with Ming, maybe that's more around documentation. Hey, do we have documentation around this project that I can go read and make sure that I'm doing this correctly? I don't know everything that you're going to be doing necessarily in that job, but maybe it's not, hey, where do I go to fix this bug? It's more, hey, where do I go to find information about what I should be developing here? But the willingness to go research on your own, that's the important thing. Is the ability and the willingness to show initiative for yourself. Mel says, is it normal to have several hosting services for one thing? Example, GitHub pages for the portfolio web page, 2 servers for the project. It links to the database and the web pages. Potentially. Normal. I don't know if there is a normal in web development, to be perfectly honest with you. It just depends on what you've developed. You may have, I think that's a good example, having a GitHub pages that links out to the actual applications. Maybe there are multiple applications. Maybe you have one application on DigitalOcean and an application on Google Cloud and an application on Amazon Web Services, because you wanted to learn those different DevOps opportunities, and so you took advantage of those different things. So that would make sense to have them in different places. I would say I don't know that it makes a lot of sense to keep things in the same application separate. Typically, I would want to keep my database server, my web server, backend server, if those are not the same. I'd want to keep them all in the same ecosystem. So I'd want them all in DigitalOcean, or I'd want them all in AWS or something like that. Also depends on whether you're using any sort of managed services. Like AWS has managed services for everything, to where you don't have to handle, upsizing instances and things like that. I don't know what DigitalOcean has as far as that's concerned, um, but I would prefer it be in the same ecosystem, just because it's easier to work with that way typically. It doesn't have to be, though. It doesn't have to be. You could have a database in AWS, and you can have your web server on DigitalOcean over here, and you can have your front end hosted on, I don't know, GitHub pages or something like. You can do that. That's the beauty of web development. You can have stuff all over the place. So I wouldn't say that it's wrong. I think it would be. I would create more of a headache than anything. Just managing all those different separate, disparate locations, but it's not necessarily wrong. I'd want to make sure I documented it in case anybody ever asked, but I would say it's probably not normal, though. I think most people are going to want to keep everything as together as possible. So I would prefer it in the same ecosystem. Not necessarily the same server, but the same ecosystem, personally. Ming says, I have to build an MVP in 3 months. Does it necessarily have to be coded? Because the tools they're using, MS Platform, he hasn't mentioned yet anything about building the application. So for me, MVP is an actual functional app. If it's not coded, then it's just design. So you can spend a good amount of time on design up front if that is necessary. It's great if you can iterate through that, get started with some of it, but iterate through the rest of it as you go. But if you need to spend time at the beginning just hashing everything out from a design standpoint, that's okay. Just realize it's going to change. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, guys. Just realize it's going to change over time because that's what happens with every project. um, Pretty much no matter what. Ian makes a good point. That really is a question for the client. There are prototyping tools. Figma, to some degree has that, to where you can do stuff that's visual. There are some there are some, no code tools that you could use like Airtables or something like that to give some functionality before it's actually fully coded that might be a step between that they want to see before dumping too much money in the actual development. So that really is, like Ian said, that really is a better question for the client. My guess is MVP means functioning application. Now, again, we want that to be the smallest thing that it can be, that it needs to be. But generally, in my opinion, MVP means functioning application. So it would need to be coded. It would need to be working, ready to go, ready to deploy publicly. But that's why we define our terms with the client too, right? So that's why we explain what we're doing, what our process is, what they're paying for, things like that. When you're talking to your client, you need to understand what their expectations are, and they need to understand what you are going to actually give them. So it sounds like you need to have a more in-depth conversation with your client and just validate what they're expecting in 3 months versus what you think you can provide in 3 months. So that would be my suggestion there. I don't know if the coffee's helping my voice. My voice is kind of going out now. Yeah, that's a good point, Ian. Because there are going to be changes, I wouldn't even say if. I would just say because there are going to be changes. You need to communicate that to the client that it's going to change the scope. You're changing the scope. You're changing the timeline. I'll be honest with you. This is something that I've struggled with myself, both in my personal clients as well as in dealing with even clients for my current job. And part of it is I want to be a nice guy. We want to be nice. We want to be able to say, yeah, we can do whatever. But at the end of the day, if we start changing scope or adding to scope, we're creating a problem for ourselves if we're not updating the timeline, updating the deliverables, updating the price. And so it's very important that we communicate when the scope is actually changing. Now, sometimes there are changes that might alter the scope, but not significantly enough to have this conversation. But unfortunately, a lot of times that when they want to change, it's going to change the scope of the project. It's going to change the timeline of the project, which should change the cost of the project, typically to increase it. And so one of the questions that we like to ask is, okay, here's what you want to do. This is how much this is how much time it's going to take. Do you want to add that time and cost, or do you want to cut something else out? All right. So instead of just saying, hey, it's going to be X amount, to do that, you give them an option, right? You give them the option to say, to understand the impact, because it's one thing to say, hey, this is going to cost you $1,000 more, right? It's another thing to say, hey, if we do this, it's going to cost $1,000 more, unless you want to get rid of something else. Is there anything in here that's not as important as this that you want to cut? We could cut that out, and then the budget doesn't have to change, the timeline doesn't have to change. When presented with those questions, typically what will happen is the client will either say, no, let's not do it, or they'll add it on. I very rarely have had a client actually switch it out, actually take something out of the scope, because they're more likely to add something to the scope and pay for it than they are to take something out of the scope because they had a new idea. If you've done a good job of walking through what MVP looks like, they've already talked through the most important pieces of that application, and most of what's in your MVP probably isn't something that they can get rid of. But that's typically how we would want to frame that conversation is, this is what it's going to cost time and money wise to add that in. Is there anything that you want to cut to be able to add that in or replace it with? Because then at the end of the day, they feel like they're making the decision, and it's not just you being a jerk charging them more money, right? Because as a client who doesn't understand development, they oftentimes feel like they're getting taken, unfortunately. And sometimes they are, unfortunately. So there are some devs out there that will just, treat people poorly. But I would say you definitely want to give them the choice, because then they have made the decision about that. And it's not you being a jerk. You're giving them options. You're giving them possibilities. And they're making the final decision there. They're hopefully not feeling like they're forced into a specific decision. So that's the direction that I would go with that situation. All right. Any other questions? Questions, comments, sarcastic remarks? Again, just for your calendars, remember next Saturday, we will not have a live stream. We'll have it the following Monday on the 17th. I will be playing board games with friends, so I apologize. My board games are going to come first. Mostly because I haven't played a lot of board games this year so far. Let's see. So the client is for work. If that's the case, yeah, I would definitely get with. So if this client is for your current job, I would get with. Well, if you don't have a project manager, like, who's the client? Somebody needs to have that relationship with the client, right? Hopefully it's not just you as a developer. Hopefully it's the owner, or maybe a project manager or somebody like that. They're the ones really that should be having that conversation more if it's part of your job. Manager and CEO. Okay. So probably the manager should be the one having this conversation, but you might need to have the conversation with the manager. But that needs to happen at the beginning. You need to set the expectations at the beginning. Are you being asked to decide what your process looks like? If that's the case, then you need to figure out what makes the most sense for you. If the company already has a process, then that needs to be communicated to the client so that they know what to expect. Yeah, well, it sounds like they have a contract. So it sounds like a third party client to me, Ian. But yeah, you definitely, the first thing you need to do is make sure that expectations are set, as far as this is our process, this is our timeline, things like that. That needs to be laid out at the very beginning, and agreed upon at the very beginning. Whether That probably should include things like, this is how often we're going to meet. This is how often we're going to attempt to have releases pushed out for MVP. Um, Lots of conversations that need to happen in that meeting to set up the expectations. Hey, we're gonna start off with these designs. You're gonna look at them and approve them. Then we're gonna move forward with that for development. And like, you need to lay out the process for the client so they know what to expect, um, because that's really going to be the key to helping you have the successful project. Planning and communicating. Planning what you're going to do, communicating with the client what that process looks like, and then communicating throughout the process of the actual building of the application. Um, so yeah, Ian, and that's where it's a little confusing, because your manager should not be your client; they should be on your team, and so they should be more of a PM, most likely. But as the project gets bigger, he wants you to build out a team. All right, so what they're looking to do is to start small and move and expand as you've got the process in place. So it sounds like they want you to figure out what that process looks like. So I would work really diligently at setting up the expectations and the process flow for communication. Um, yeah, it's a fuzzy term. Um, so it sounds like you're gonna be project manager and dev, which is not great. Um, but welcome to the development world. So here's my suggestion. I would write out, plan out initial meetings with the client to get to validate what MVP looks like to them from a functionality standpoint. And then I would begin the process of design based off of that functionality information. I would set up with the client a weekly or bi-weekly meeting, probably more meetings early on, um, to facilitate those conversations, so you're not talking about everything in one big meeting. Set up meetings, make sure you have the right stakeholders from the client in those meetings that are going to actually use this application, they're going to be asking for changes later on. Um, you're going to have to create the workflow for gathering information, providing designs, and then telling them how the process is going to go and making sure that it stays on track with that. That's a lot to do for your first job, quite frankly. Um, this is I really wish that they had a project manager for you. That really is their job. um, Especially for your first development job. This is a lot for you to tackle. I'm not saying you can't do it. I think you probably can. I'm just saying it's a little unfair. But that would be the steps that I would take. Figure out what information you need. Figure out how you want to communicate with them and how frequently you want to communicate with them, and make sure that those meetings are useful when you have those conversations. There's a lot of other pieces that goes into that, quite frankly. But I think that's the important thing. Number one thing with clients is communication. The number one thing is communicating what their expectations are, what your expectations are of them, what you're delivering to them, and how frequently that communication actually happens. Um, that is going to be your saving grace in this project. Yeah, I would agree with Ian. Honestly, your manager should be the project manager. They should be the one doing a lot of that stuff. You should, as a developer, be focused frankly, mostly on the code and the functionality. Um, they really probably should hire a designer to come in and just knock out some designs once you have a document that explains functionality and ideas. Um, that's the other thing I would say. Document everything you can from those meetings. If you can record the meetings, record the meetings. Go back and listen to them and document them. Maybe use there's some AI tools that will connect to your meetings that will give you summaries and give you information about deliverables that people mention and things like that. I would probably try to use something like that. I'm not a huge fan of AI stuff, just being thrown into everything, but especially for this type of situation where it's you, maybe one other person and the client, it's good to have things recorded so you can go back and say, well, actually you said this, but it's good to use some of the AI stuff to help facilitate some of that project management for you. If you can, I think it's like read.ai is one of them. You might look into that, see if you can integrate that stuff into your recording. Yeah, I'm not worried so much, Mel, about telling them that you're recording it. Although I think you should, um, just to be nice. For me, it's more, about a record, so you can go back and figure out um, if you forgot something, and again, having AI integrated with that to help you kind of get that in written form too, it can be very helpful as well. So, yeah, you should tell them if you're recording. You should tell them. Most of the time, if you're recording, you should tell the person. It's pretty rare that you should record something without without them knowing. So there's that. But yeah, good luck. I'm anxious to hear more about it, to hear how things are going. So keep us updated as you get started on Monday. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you don't get overwhelmed too quickly. Again, I would really push on your manager as much as possible to do some of those things. If they don't know how to do that, give them ideas. Some of the things that we've talked about that would be good. I would hope that if they have clients that they've interacted with, and they should have some experience with that, but maybe not. Anyway, as soon as we get off here, I'll add that ticket, the last community ticket. I think the last community ticket that we'll have for the DeepPockets project before we start digging into real tickets. The ticket will be on creating a budget line item. I'll add a little bit more details to that, and it'll be creating the workflow through pseudocode. It doesn't have to be JavaScript. It could be some other. You could do it in PHP if you wanted to. You could do it in Python style, whatever you want to do. I'm okay with it as long as it's easy to follow. It can just be. It doesn't really have to be code either. If you just want to, write it out in comments or something like that. I think I would prefer that you do it in some sort of code, just so you kind of go through the process that we went through, and just that way you can provide some feedback to me as well, because I'd love to hear some feedback on that. But that would be where I would what I would expect for that. So I'll get that ticket created. Yeah, absolutely, Ian. Scope of work or statement of work, you definitely want to get that solidified and signed as quickly as you can. So good luck, Ming, on the job, and congratulations again on getting that. Looking forward to hearing more about it in the days ahead. Hey, if you guys wouldn't mind hitting the like button for me, we only got 1 like so far, and there's at least 4 of you here, so we should have at least 4 likes. If you don't mind helping me out there, hit the like button. I think most of you are subscribed. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. I think you're all in the Dev Mentor Dave Discord channel too. So if you're not there, jump in there, especially if you're going to do the homework for this. So I will put my pseudocode in the homework ticket as well, just to give you an example. I think I can do that in code. I'll take a look at it. So anyway, thanks for joining me live today, guys. It's great to actually talk to you guys again. It's been a while since we really had a lot of interaction like we had today. So thanks for jumping in with me. I appreciate it. It's been fun. Hopefully it was interesting to you. Hopefully it was helpful to you, and hopefully you enjoyed it as well. But Anyway, have a great. You're welcome, Ian. Have a great weekend. I will see you all hopefully in a video sometime this week, but I'll definitely see you a week from Monday on the next live stream as we look at some of the homework assignments and look at some tickets that we'll be setting up for everybody in the application. Probably walk through a little bit more of the application code too at that point as well. So looking forward to it. We'll see you all on the next one. Oh, sorry, I'm yawning. I got a decent amount of sleep, but ugh. All right. Have a great weekend, guys. I will see you shortly. Bye.